Here we go. It is Friday, Entrepreneurs. Today is a special show for me to record as I'm reconnecting with Cayla Birk, UT alum, went to college together, and since then, she has been crushing it in the art space, and she is extremely talented. Her brand, Cayla Birk, has spent nearly a decade honing in on contemporary artistic style. An intellectual by nature, Birk's work takes us on a journey of culture, wit, music, literature, and everything in between. In more recent expositions, she plays the concept of familiar objects made large, often embedded with secret ciphers. You'll find out her Instagram and her website at the end of the show to check all this out. It's incredible. A large portion of her work merge traditional acrylic paints with other unique materials. She transcends the confines of mixed media art to create a style all on her own. Her work can be seen at numerous international contemporary art fairs and has been acquired by many private collectors. I'm excited for today once again, and as we have an artist who's crushing it on the show today, the halfway point, we'll do our spotlight story on an article from Entrepreneur Online titled 5 Reasons Artists Make Great Entrepreneurs. Cayla, I'm ready to go. Why did you become an entrepreneur?
Hey, Vinny. Thanks so much for having me on the show. First of all, it's really nice to reconnect. And obviously, any Tampa alum, I always love to reconnect, especially, as we grow as adults. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to talk to you today. So, first question of why did I become an entrepreneur? I think there's a lot of answers I could probably give to that. The main one would be that, so I worked in advertising out of college. I always believed I wanted to be a creative director. I wanted the big stuff, I wanted to be like the head honcho of Wyden and Kennedy and things like that. So I kind of always knew coming into college that I was going to declare being advertising major, which I did. And I worked for advertising agencies. I then went off and did my own freelance work. Um, Sorry, Vinny, I know you're going to hear my people outside. If you want to cut that, my apologies.
Good.
So yeah, I went into college knowing what I wanted to do and always knew that as long as I was creative and using my creative side of my brain, that I would be happy. That being said, I after going into working for someone else and dedicating all those hours, I could see that the growth rate was really slow. And I knew that I had the ability to work for myself. So once I started freelancing, I enjoyed that it gave me the other spare time to want to still live life, so to speak, instead of working, the 9 to 5 grind. And then so from there, I kind of jumped into, I did freelance design work. I was doing branding. Again, I always felt like, to be honest, I had the ideas. I was the delegator of the ideas, and that other people were a bit more, adept at making those ideas come to fruition. They were more artistically inclined and everything else. I just knew that I had the good mind for it. So, that being said, I chose to be an entrepreneur really because A, I wanted to work for myself and have my own time, and B, because I my mother raised me on her own, me and my brother and sister, and she was also an entrepreneur. And I watched her go through ups and downs, and we came from nothing, and then she built herself into something. So I did have that example set for me. And I think that when you're a person who is self-reliant, which I am, you have the ability to be an entrepreneur. Uh, what I've learned is that a lot of people are not meant to be entrepreneurs. We still need people who can follow a rhythm, and they need structure from someone else. But I always knew that I was kind of destined to work for myself. It gives me the time, the energy, and all the things that I want to do. I still am enjoying in life. So, yeah.
This segment is sponsored by Bedrock Business Builders, a small business startup specialist. Start, build, manage.
Yeah, it gives us the time or the ability to choose when we work and when we don't. And like you said there, and we'll get into that in a little bit with your most challenging parts of entrepreneurship, the ups and downs. You saw that with your mom. In entrepreneurship, it is not a smooth, same amount deposit every Friday. Some months
Yep,
it's zero, some months it's a lot, and that's just part of the game. But thank you for kicking us off, Cayla.
of course.
And now, welcome back to everyone listening on. This is That Entrepreneur Show. My name is Vincent A. Lancey, and I am excited to launch a art entrepreneur for the first time in at least a few months. We have a great journey ahead. She's been grinding for a long time, crushing it. You see her artwork on buildings, in the museums, you name it. It's all over. But I would like to also give a big shout out to Bedrock Business Builders, our show partner throughout this year. Joe is crushing it as always, and I recently hopped on his show. So make sure to head over to vincentalancy.com after the episode to check out my collaboration with Joe. Cayla, I want to kick us off by helping everyone tuning in. As always, share your greatest lessons learned in entrepreneurship.
Okay, so you know, for anybody who's ever been an entrepreneur or even tried to go off and just do your own thing and work for yourself, there are a lot of, ups and downs. And some of the biggest challenges that I have faced, or I guess some of the biggest things I've learned, right? That's what you're asking me. I've learned a lot about time management. And also, working for yourself and being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart, because as much as other people say, oh, you don't work a 9 to 5. Yeah, well, entrepreneurship is a 24/8, like it's not even a 24/7. It is a 24/8. It never stops. And what I think I thrive most off of is what I put in is what I get out. So, if I have a day that I take off, I know that I'm going to, I'm putting aside things that I need to be doing. So it taught me a lot about time management. And, a few years ago, I had a friend of mine who was an artist, and she said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And for many years in the beginning, I struggled with that because I think I actually had the talent, but wasn't working hard. And I would see all these other people who maybe lacked certain things, but their drive made up for so much. So I've always learned to kind of try and hone in on my drive. And also, that quote really changed my life. I definitely believe that when talent works hard, it becomes a lot easier. So that's what I'm trying to be, the talent that's working hard.
Oh, I'm right there with you. And it is a 24/8. Just there's something that always comes up. Even little things like the website, for example. I had neglected my website for about 3 months, and to catch up to where I needed to be took a full Saturday on a weekend, 12 hours, and then the next day into a little more just to get this website caught up. And I'm still not there, but you have to move on. I love that 24/8. And we choose that just for the freedom to dictate our days, our schedules. There's many benefits of entrepreneurship. That is certainly it for me. But I'd like to shift back to your current business, Cayla Birk Art. For everyone who does not know about you yet, tell them what they should know.
Okay. Hi, listeners. I'm Cayla Birk. I'm a contemporary fine artist. And I'm sure that at the end of here, I can give you all of my things. But I mean, Instagram is Cayla Birk, at Cayla Birk, Cayla Birk. Same thing with CaylaBirk.com. Pretty much anything on the internet, I own the rights to of my name. So you can find me. It's easy. And yeah, so that's pretty much the gist of it for now. I'm a contemporary fine artist. I've been doing this now for nearly 8 years, which is actually insane to say out loud, but I'm happy to be here. And yeah, I feel like everything in life kind of brought me to this point. So I'm very grateful.
So, what are some things that we can expect from you soon? What are some things we're working on if you're able to share?
Okay. Oh, I like that question. I am able to share. So I've actually just completed a new series of work. The series is called Take the Lot. They are large scale versions of Loteria cards. Loteria is like Mexican bingo, is the best way I can explain it. And actually, coming up at the end of this month on October 21st, I have my second ever solo show in my career. The first one was in LA. This second one will be here in Palm Beach. I happen to be from Florida, so it's nice to have the second one close to home. And I'm looking forward to it. It's nice to be able to share my accomplishments with friends and family and people who usually don't make it to all my shows. So that's what you can expect from me coming up. And then, right around November, we start to prepare for Art Miami Week. And I most likely will be in the Art Miami tent or context, premiering some art, which I've done every year for the past 7, minus our one for COVID, in which it was closed down. So it'll be nice to return back to that. It's obviously our biggest, most hectic week of the year for artists. It's a good time. It's a big party. And the week after, I sleep a lot. So it's good.
Well, it's great to see all your success. I'm proud of everything you're doing. And please be sure to keep me in the loop so I can share all these dates, your art shows with that entrepreneur show family on all social media networks. And I also want to ask you, you said contemporary art. Is this an art style that you always wanted to pursue, or is this something that you found a passion for over time?
Okay, so Contemporary art is a very broad spectrum term, right? Contemporary just means pretty much anything after like 1950, right? We had the Middle Ages, we had Baroque period, Dark Ages, we went through a lot of stuff, Renaissance, everything. But contemporary basically just means after a certain point. Granted, my art is very modern, and there's other contexts you could put into it. It's neo-Dadaistic, it has a little bit of abstract expressionism in it. So it's hard to kind of categorize it into one, but the generalized term would be contemporary art. And to be honest with you, as I said before, I was intending to be an advertising creative director. I really never thought that being a full-time fine artist would happen for me. It just kind of naturally happened that way. And in terms of the style of art I make, any of my friends who have known me since high school, I actually went to a high school of the arts. And they would tell you that I've been drawing some form of my signature designs now since then. So since I was about 15 and I'm 32. So 17 years. And I don't know if you remember, probably some people in college definitely still send me pictures of like, little notes and stuff, always with my style of drawing that I've had. So the truth is, it has been something that's pervaded my life for a long time. It's just gently molded and kind of turned into its form right now. And I don't like to call it the finished form really, because I could be 80 years old and it might take its whole other course. So I always like to say there's room for more.
I look forward to seeing as the drawings continue to progress and you become bigger and bigger. We'll have to keep bringing you back on the show to let everybody know how the latest art show went. But before we hop into the spotlight story this week, I want to ask you, what are two of the more challenging areas of entrepreneurship for you?
Okay, so I think two of the areas that are most difficult would probably be okay. So for me, I am a control freak. A lot of us are. I try to combat it in certain ways, but in terms of my art, and it being my career, I definitely have tried to learn to relinquish some control. There is a point you reach in any career where you
Yeah.
do need mentors and you do need people to help you and kind of take away some of that burden or even, the guessing that you're trying to figure out. So I think one of the challenges for me was relinquishing control and allowing others to help, which I've become much better at. And then, the other challenge would be probably a little bit more art world specific, which is like anyone working in a creative field knows that there's this constant pressure to be the most creative, to make the best thing, the newest thing, something that's never been made before. It's a constant struggle because we're in like a postmodern crisis, right? Everything's already been done. We're just repurposing and reusing. And this extends into much more than just art. Music too. We sample films, books made into films, it all in the creative world of any kind. You do struggle with trying to be the most creative. That's always the burning fire kind of between you and other creatives. But although that's a challenge for me, I actually have learned to thrive off of it. I love when I go into a museum or anything like, I've had friends and people say to me, when you walk into an art fair or when you walk in a museum, you're walking around like a defensive driver. And I was like, yeah, because as an artist, I look at things both in a business perspective and then also a creative sense. So when I'm walking around looking at other art, I want to know, is anyone else making something that looks like mine, that feels like mine? Am I different? How can I be better? So it is like a constant learning process. And although it seems a little bit of a challenge, I have learned to make that less of a challenge and just thrive off of that part.
I love that. How to be different, how to be better. We always have to find a way to stand out, and that's a constant challenge for entrepreneurs. But as entrepreneurs, we have to embrace it. Thank you for such a great episode so far, Kayla. I think it's a
Yeah, no
perfect
problem.
time to hop right into this week's spotlight story, and I'm excited to get her take on this as an artist. Again, this is from Entrepreneur Online, and it's titled Five Reasons Why Entrepreneurs Make Great Artists. Artists and entrepreneurs see things that no one else is capable of seeing. As an entrepreneur who has worked with more than 450 artists in different capacities, this author of the article, Maria Brito, knows for a fact that we all start with a vision. For both types of people, many possibilities come out of literally nothing: a blank canvas, a nondescript piece of marble, a space that hasn't been developed, or a niche that isn't served right. Here are five ways entrepreneurs and artists are alike. They know their ideas are worth money. They depend on their creativity. They trust their intuition. They are comfortable with ambiguity, and they are interdisciplinary thinkers. And I'm going to touch on the two of these, and then we'll bring Cayla back on the show. I want to talk about they trust their intuition. Every human is fully, every human being is fully intuitive, but some of us rely on intuition more than others. Without intuition, it is very hard to survive as a business owner or as an artist. Good entrepreneurs are guided by gut feelings, and I can agree with that. The more we use this skill, the better we get at learning to recognize its signals, whether it is pursuing an investment opportunity or instinctively knowing what the next move in front of the canvas will be. Artists and entrepreneurs are aware of their sixth sense and avoid second guessing it. The next one and last one I'll touch on before we bring Cayla back on the show is they depend on their creativity. Businesses succeed or fail depending on how creative their leaders are. When a business founder is creative, they can come to the market with the most innovative companies, find solutions to big and small problems, pivot when necessary, and adapt to current circumstances. Artists also depend on their creativity more than anything. They have to come up with creations that are original and that appeal to a certain group of collectors. Like in every industry, there is also the case of artists who don't possess the greatest artistic talent, but instead are full of ideas, creativity, and business savvy. Was Steve Jobs the greatest coder or programmer? No, but he was a great visionary and marketing creative who could figure out how to make the impossible happen. Was Andy Warhol the greatest painter? No, but he was a brilliant executor of ideas. Cayla, what do you take away from that write-up?
So it's really great that you touched on that part last, because I have, written after reading through the article, I did kind of write a note on that, the brilliant executor of ideas. So it's really quite strange. I was telling you before that I felt that I wasn't necessarily the most adept at, there was other people who were so much more artistically inclined than I was. And I mean, maybe that came from, I went to a high school of the arts. I wasn't even a visual arts major. I actually was communications major and did digital design. But when you're surrounded by that much talent at all times, it's easy for you to know what you're good at and what you're not. But sometimes that maybe hinders growth. So I think it's interesting that they, attributed that to being who Andy Warhol was, which is a brilliant executor of ideas. And that's what I always felt that I was better at. So it's interesting. That was one of my favorite parts. But I think actually the part that really hit home for me was number 5, the interdisciplinary thinkers. So when I was younger, I always was very like multifaceted. I liked many different things. I liked different types of music. I liked different types of clothes. I was always like kind of all over the place. And when I was young, I had kids and friends and people tell me, "Oh, well, you're a poser. You can't be all those things. You can't like classic rock and then wear K-Swiss, and you can't like hip hop and then also go to a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert." Like, there was all these conflicting things. My interests they didn't align. And what I realize now is that made people uncomfortable because maybe they weren't capable of having the interdisciplinary thinking. It took me a lot of years after people putting me down for me to realize that's exactly who I am. I'm someone who is multifaceted and likes many things. And I mean, for God's sake, man, look at my art. Everything that's written in there is so complex and it comes from so many different things, literature, music, everything. And so it's actually so funny how something that someone tried to dull at a young age for me instead is the thing that made me who I am today, including like my style itself. So it actually comes full circle in that way. And I think from that article, for any artist or entrepreneur who's reading something of that nature, they should know that like what is part of you at a younger age definitely does continue on, but like it's so important to nurture those things. Instead, I was put down for it for so long that I thought, okay, maybe something's wrong with me. Why do I like all these things? And then now it's who I am. So I think that part was really, out of the whole article, the one that really just made me feel good to know that someone else saw that is just a very typical trait of a creative mind and of an artist. So
Yeah.
it gave me some validity after 20 years.
But you're crushing, you're doing your thing. It's a great lesson to out there. Don't be stuck in someone else's norm or definition of what you're supposed to do. What works for some doesn't work for everyone. And that's something I touched more on a mental health break podcast, where whenever we speak about how to improve your mental health. Like there are a ton of ways to do that. Like don't feel like you have to just only exercise or only eat well,
Right.
just be yourself. And thank you for encouraging and inspiring me right now to keep going out there.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah,
My dream, my path, just keep trying to grow and stay unique. It's a challenge as we talked about, but we stick through it. I now like to ask you, Cayla, what is one book, tool, any resource that you use throughout your day as an entrepreneur that can help our audience out?
okay, so for me, when I was trying to think of, this is always a very personal question, right? A lot of people will tell you, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, or, there's all these like kind of basic ones, but I wanted to dig a little deeper, and I have two for you guys. I know I'm supposed to one, but
Let's do
I've
it.
got one that's a book and then one that's more, digital age. So the book is called The Artist's Way. It's by Julia Cameron. And it's actually a book that when I was in University of Tampa, I took a class, and our entire class was almost like a very big therapy session. Our teacher made us put our desks in a circle. We all read this book, and every week at the end of each chapter was, some sort of a worksheet of sorts that gets you to open up. And it really digs into creativity and what it means to be a creative. So actually the book is great for not just people who are actually, who consider themselves to be artists.
Right.
There were so many people in my class who who thought they had no inclination of what it meant to be creative or an artist, and it really helped them blossom. It was incredible to see. So I say that's a great book, and especially like do the worksheets in the back. It's once a week. It's not hard for you, but it is really good, and it will open you up. It opened me up to realize, it makes you dig into your past of why you are the way you are, and creative things and people who stopped you, and how to grow from there. So that is my book recommendation, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And then my other thing would be, this is quite funny, master classes. I'm sure that everybody like has seen it, or maybe they've watched one or two. I caught myself being a person who, when I first started watching the master classes, I watched a lot of the food ones. So my other creative love is food. That's like my other creative outlet when I'm not doing my job. So I've watched all the food ones. And then I realized like the whole point of this thing with masterclass is that you can watch ones on anything. Like it doesn't mean you have, people don't, they tend to stick to what they think they like. But I actually, my favorite one that I've listened to was an entrepreneurship one, which works for this podcast. And it is Sarah Blakely. She is the woman who invented Spanx.
Yeah.
I knew that. I knew her name. I knew of her, but I had never like listened to any of her TED Talks or anything. I actually was, which is kind of a little frowned upon for me as a woman. I should probably be a bit better about my intake of female leaders. But she was great. It was a perfect amount of classes. And she really is inspiring. And there's things that I've learned from that masterclass that I've taken into my own career that have really helped. So master classes, guys, whichever ones you want. If you're into plants, do Ron Finley. If you're into cooking, do, any of the Gordon Ramsay stuff, like go for it. They're great. And they really do help to kind of, sometimes you want to get out of your own brain or your own daily routine of your career. And it's nice to learn something new that has nothing to do with, what you're doing. Cause sometimes you can draw these really weird, unexpected points from it that will still somehow apply to your life.
Agree with that 100%. Always be a student, forever learning until you don't want to learn anymore. And I find inspiration from various outlets as well that I somehow tie into either a post or part of the book or somehow in an episode. Love that. But before we sign off, it's time for my favorite question because I get to learn more about each guest. If you could sit down with any entrepreneur throughout history, dead or alive, who are you going with?
Okay, this is one of those questions that just really sends you on like a little journey in your mind. It's kind of like the who's the five people you want at your life dinner party thing. Over the years, my answers have changed on like that whole thing. But I went back and forth in my mind a lot about who to choose in this moment because I could choose someone who was in the art world and maybe, that's someone I'd want to learn most from. But so I narrowed it down to two.
All right.
They're going to be unexpected ones. My first idea was Hugh Hefner. So a lot of people will have lots of qualms with me saying that. But Hugh Hefner was so much more than just a smut magazine kind of man. A lot of people don't realize he really broke a lot of boundaries for tons of stuff, especially with his like late night show he used to have in Chicago. He had Ella Fitzgerald on the show and stuff when that wasn't acceptable. So he broke a lot of norms. And I also believe nudity is a great thing. We were all, born naked. So it's fine to me that he wanted to make a business out of that. But he was very much an entrepreneur and used that to kind of keep going. And he did a lot of great things, despite whatever people think about him, maybe on a personal level. So he was my number one. But then I think I quickly overlapped him with Richard Branson.
Okay.
So Richard Branson might be an obvious one for a lot of people. And I get that. He's clearly an entrepreneur, very successful, has many businesses. My thing when it comes to Richard Branson is he was someone who was never afraid to take any risks. He has a masterclass, by the way, guys. I haven't watched it yet, but side note. So I've always found him to be incredible, because to make what he did in the era he did when it came to music, and then still didn't let that ruin him. Now we listen to everything on streaming. He just kept his entire business and ideas and stuff afloat, and he still lives life. I think it's very amazing. You can read some of his books. I've only read like excerpts from things. So yeah, but also, if Richard Branson ever listens to this, there was a time I do have it, it sells on my website. It's a etiquette of flight book, and it's like, a 15-step guide to how not to be a dickhead on an airplane, the proper things we should do and the way we should treat people. And I sent it to him, to his home in the British Virgin Islands. And then the week later, his entire home got ruined by a hurricane. So I never know if it made it into his hands. It was given directly to someone on his staff to be put into his hands. But I wrote him a letter and everything, and I wanted something back from it, but it didn't happen. So Richard Branson, if you're listening, I love you. Put me on one of your planes and I'll do a show in the air, little art show in the air.
I've sent in the beginning tons of books to different people I wanted in celebrity spotlights to hopefully make a difference on a larger scale. I didn't hear back from many either. But before we go, where are you going to sit down with these entrepreneurs? If you could pick the location for the meet, where's it going to be?
Ooh. Okay, so I'm a little old school. I'm Lebanese, and so feeding people brings me a lot of joy. And even in my house, when my friends come in, everyone stands in the kitchen. It's a very centralized place. And I think there's something about that space in a kitchen and that energy that makes people kind of let down some barriers. Maybe it's because we all have to eat. It's like our commonality as humans, but there's something about that really breaks people down. So I don't think I'd need to be anywhere fancy. I would say just a dinner table with some food and some good wine or something between us. That's all I need. My house, their house, anywhere. That's what I would choose. I don't think I need to be anywhere crazy. I'd rather be in a place where someone feels comfortable for me to, part their mind anyways. So
you have a signature dish that you're going to be cooking?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Wow. Great question. I get this a lot from people, even like who come over for dinner. They're like, what's your one dish you're great at? The answer is, I don't know what that dish is yet, because I'm constantly learning and trying to be a better chef. But I am from Florida, so my go-to is probably like a nice piece of fish with some roasted veg and maybe some mash.
There you go. Cayla,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the show. Great to catch up. Where can everybody find you? Once again, plug all of your websites, social medias, and again, any dates you had for upcoming announcements.
Okay, guys, you can find my art at caylabirk.com, www.caylabirk.com. Instagram is at Cayla Birk, spelled the same way. I am pretty much on anything you look for. I haven't gotten to the TikTok yet. I do own it and have it, but I haven't jumped yet. So wish me luck on that affair. But you can see my art all over. It's carried in Miami, LA, New York, Berlin, London. So if you ever want to visit some when you're around the world, do it. And for those of you who happen to be in Florida, October 21st, it's a Friday from 6 to 8 will be my solo show for my new series, Take the Lot. Please come say hello. I support and love all of you for supporting and loving me. So yeah, that's
it's in Fort Lauderdale, October 21st.
It's in Palm Beach. So that's about 45 minutes north of Fort Lauderdale.
All right. Well, everyone be sure to go give Cayla a follow and check out her website. Stay up to date. I will be posting that as we get closer. October 21st. Mark your calendars. And I am at Vincent A. Lancy on YouTube and all social media. The show is at That Entrepreneur Show. I wish everyone a great and safe weekend. And until next Friday, Cayla, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Vinny. I appreciate it.